Daf Tzadi Aleph Amud Beis. We'll begin Tzadi Aleph Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. So we're holding in the shaila that Rava asked Rav Nachman, if a person threw a kazayis of truma into a house which is tamei, what's the din? Now, even though we know that normally the shiur for oichlin is a groigeris, is a dried fig, and here it's only kazayis, the shaila should be chayv or not. What's the shaila? Shaila is that he threw it into the house which is tamei, which had less than a beya of eichlin. So if it's less than a beya, the size of a beya of eichlin, it can be makabel tumah. I'm going now with Rashi Shita. It could be makabel tumah, but it cannot be matama others unless it's a shiur of a beya. So by throwing this kazayas into the house that's tamei, and it lands with the pachas of a kebeya, now it has a certain chashivos in that this oichel can be matama others. So that now, when it lands with the other oichlim, it combines with a beya, and it has a chashivos that it's the size of a oichel that could be matama others. So therefore, the shaila was: do we say that legabe Shabbos we look at the shiur for Shabbos and it has to be a groigeris and therefore he's potor, or do we say that since legabe tumah it has a chashivas for Shabbos as well, and therefore he should be chayiv even though it's a kazayis? And the way some of the achronim are masbir it's the shaila is if he threw a kazayis, because it has to have a chashivas, a certain chashivas on its own. So it can't be just a minimal amount. It has to have a certain chashivas on its own. It has a kazayas. It's not chashiv enough to be chayiv for Shabbos, but that together with the chashivas that it gets, that legabe tumah, that it can be matama others, will that now be machayiv him for the hoitzov on Shabbos? And Taisa says we're talking specifically in a case where it's a zrika, where he threw it, because we have to have, as we'll see from the Gemara coming up shortly, that in order to, this shaila is really only dependent if they happen simultaneously. If it happens bidna. If at the same time it has the halacha of tumah, there's the hanocha on Shabbos, so we say at this moment where there's the hanocha, where it lands, and now it acquires this halacha, this additional halacha for tumah, does it give it a chashivas for Shabbos that now the item that's munach, that's landed, is a davar chashiv? But if it doesn't happen at the same time, then there's no shaila. So Taisa says that therefore we're talking specifically about zrika, because therefore the hanocha only occurs when it lands, and the tumah and the hanocha comes at the same time. But if we'd be talking about haitzah, then once he would carry it, if it would be 3 tvachim above the item, then it would already be considered to be munach before it landed. The hanocha would occur before it landed. And if the hanocha occurred before it landed, it hasn't yet acquired the halach of tumah. Rather, the hanocha would be walking. The hanocha would be, once it got within 3, even before it touched the pachas mikabeya, it would be considered to be munach. And the tumah is only when it comes into physical contact, so that wouldn't be be'idna. So that's why we talk specifically about zrika. So that was his shaila. The Gemara says, if a person took out some of the bread from the shtei halechem meshua, so the lechem upon him, the weekly bread, the 12 loaves that are on the shulchan, if he took it outside the Beis Hamikdash, shiur and kigroigeris, the shiur for itzah is kigroigeris. Now v'mai, well, this is very similar to our case here. V'mai lema middlinyan yaitze b'kazayis. Why shouldn't we say that? Well, there is a chashivos, because once it leaves the Beis Hamikdash, then there is an isser of yaitze. So once it already has that isser of yaitze, why don't we say, and that isser of yaitze is with the kazayis, linin shabbos nami b'kazayis. And therefore we should say the shear for Shabbos should also be a kazayis. Why are we saying that the shear for the shtei lechem lechem panos kegreiger is? Why don't we say, since it requires a chashivas, that once it leaves the Beis HaMikdash, it is the Isser of Yotzei and the Psul of Yotzei, one even with the size of a kazayis. So why don't we say that kazayis gives it chashivas and it should be chayiv for Yitzah also with that share of kazayis? How can you compare it? If the psul of Yotzei, when it becomes puzzle, when it becomes puzzle of Yotzei, it's when it leaves the Beis HaMikdash. When it leaves the Beis HaMikdash, either when, if it will go on to the east side when it comes to the Ezras Noshim, or on the other sides when it goes to the Chel, then it's already psul, it's possible Yotzei. But those aren't Reshus HaRabim. The Isser of Haitzah only comes later when he leaves the whole area outside the Chayma and he gets into the Reshus HaRabim. So the Isser of Shabbos of Haitzah only comes later. So once he already Midav Chutz L'Chaymas HaZor If Solei B'Yotzei Shabbos L'Mechayev Adam Afkel Reshus HaRabim. So it doesn't come at the same time. Shabbos and Tumah, but over here, Shabbos and Tumah, they come simultaneously at the same time. And as Taisus Medayik, which we mentioned, it comes when it lands. He threw it when it lands and he touches the Oichal, the Parchs Mikabeya. There is the din of Tumah. It's now a bay that can be Matama others. And also, it's Munach and the Shabbos are Shilas in this case, but the case of the Shtei Lechem Loch Panim is not comparable because it's not, it doesn't happen simultaneously. The Beis Yislog asked the Kasha, what's Bechlal the Shaila over here? Isn't this considered Mekalkel? L'chaira, he's throwing it, the Truma, into the house which is Tomei. And now it's becoming Tomei. So why do we even have a shaila? Why isn't this considered mekalkal? Why isn't this considered mekalkal? Because now the truma can't be eaten; it has to be burned. So why isn't this considered mekalkal? And we know that kol malach is mekalkal paturim, so he should be potter. Why is it a shaila? Is he chayiv on a kazayas, or do you need a groigers? Why is it chayiv at all? He should be potter. It's mekalkal. Perhaps we can answer this kasha based on a Minchas Chinuch that talks about Mila, that when we talk about mekalkal, mesak, and mekalkal, we're talking about a physical change. And something that's mekalkal where it ruins it in a physical sense. But if it's only something that's a kilkal, halachadike kilkal, it's a kilkal hilchati, it's a halachadike kilkal. It's not a physical type of kilkal. Then, or we're talking about someone who's masak, and it has to be a physical tikkun, not just a halacha tikkun, then we don't. It's not considered mekalkel if there's no physical damage to the item. So the Mishnah said, if the person was matzniya and he took the item out and then he bought it back in, so then we say we treat it like any other item. And he's chayiv only if it has the requisite shiur. So l'cher pshita, in fact the Gemara, it's pshita. Of course, well, once now he is not storing it away anymore, and he has no specific intent, a special intent for it anymore, it's like a regular item. What's the shaila? Amar Abaya chamayaskina kigan shazar kala oitzer umakayma nikra. Abaya says the case that we're talking about over here is he took it out. And then when he came back, he threw it back into the storage area. But however, it didn't get mixed in totally with the other items. It's in a snicker, it's in a very recognizable, distinct place. So he can come in there any time and he can recognize it and pick it out from the other items in the Eitzer. So so you might think that since it's Mekayim Nikir, it's distinct and recognizable, then his original machshava, his original intent for the item is still intact, and therefore he'd be chayiv in the small shear. Kamashmalam and azar kaloitzer betula botless. Kamashmalam, no, since he threw it into the oitzer, it's like he negated his original intent. It's like he's treating it like any other of the items. If he wanted to be matzniya it, so then if he put it down with an intent, then he's matzniya it. But if he threw it into the oitzer, Even if it's Mekayim and Nikar, we say he negated the original Machshava and it's treated like anything else, any other item in his storage area. And therefore he'd be only chayev with the requisite share. Zog the Mishnah, if a person took out Eichlin, and he put it on a threshold. So there was a threshold or a small porch that was between his house and the Rishus HaRabim. So he took it from his house, he put it on the threshold. Ben shechazer v'haitzian, ben shehaitzian acher pot. Ibnei shalei also malachta b'vas achas. If after putting it down, he took it out, then he took it out, or anybody else took it out, he's potter, because the malacha was not done at one time. There was a hefsek in the malacha. So even though ultimately it was done, it was removed from the house and was taken to the Rishus HaRabim, but it was not done without an interruption, it was not done without a hefsek, and the malacha was not done by vasachas, he's potter. Kupa shimelei pears. If there's a basket full of fruit, v'nosan alei kupa chitzoina. Now he put it here. It says it's kupa chitzoina. It says he put it on the outer skupa, on the outer threshold. So we are talking over here on the outer threshold. The skupa chitzoina. This is Tzidei Rishus HaRabim. It's the last step from the porch or the threshold down to the street. It's within 3 tvachim of the ground, and that has a din of a Rishus HaRabim. So here it's considered like he put it down in the Rishus HaRabim. Now, in the Reish of the Mishnah, it says he put it on skupa. We'll see in the Gemara what status the porch itself has. But here we're talking about the skupa chitzoina, which has a halacha of a Rishus HaRabim. So, if he therefore we say if he has a kumalei present also has kubechitzoina, peres mi bachutz, even though most of the fruit is extending and protruding outside, so therefore they're considered in the Rishus HaRabim. Potter, it's still potter achi yoitzi as kol kupa. He's potter until the entire basket is taken out. To be chayv and aitzah, it can't be just part of an object. It can't even be most of the object. It has to be all of the object. So over here, if he has the basket and he has some of the pears are still inside, he has not done a complete aitzah. He hasn't been moitzed completely, and therefore he's potter. What status does this skupa have? If this threshold has a din of Rishus HaRabim, potter, how can you say in the Reisha that he's potter if he put it down on the skupa? He's potter. How come mafkim Rishus HaRabim? He took it from the house to the skupa. If it's the Rishus HaRabim, he took it from Rishus HaYochel to Rishus HaRabim. Ella, maybe you'll say a skupa Rishus HaYochel. You'll say it has a status of Rishus HaYochel. So ben shechazer v'haitzin, ben shechazer acher potter. You're saying whether he took it or someone else potter. What do you mean? How can it be potter if this threshold has a din of Rishus HaRabim, meaning that it's within 3 of the ground and it's samach to the street? As for Rishus HaRabim, how can you say if you put it down over there, he's potter? How come mapik Rishus HaYochel Rishus HaRabim? Putting it down in the skupa is equivalent to putting it down on the street on the Rishus HaRabim. It should be chayiv right away by placing it on the skupa. Ella, the Gemara says, a skupa karmelis. We must be talking where the skupa is a karmelis. It's between 3 and 10 tvachim off the ground. It's not exactly 9. It's therefore, and it's an area according to Rashid of Daled al Daled, so it has a din of a karmelis. Time in the nachba karmelis. And it's teaching us that Taima, the Nachba Karmelis, that the reason why he is potter is because he placed it down on the skupa. So he placed it in the Karmelis. But if it had been placed down, even though he's walking through the Karmelis, he took it from the house, the Rishus HaYochid, to the street, derech the Karmelis, through the Karmelis, then nevertheless, he would be chayiv. It's only potter because he placed it, he put it down on the skupa. It was noch on the skupa. But if he had put it down, if he had just passed through it, he nevertheless would be chayav. Even though the Haitzah is from the Rishus HaYochid, derech Karmelis to the Rishus HaRabim, you're still chayav. And Masnis, the like Ben Azai, and which is not like Ben Azai. If a person takes from the chanus, from his store, which is a Rishus HaYochid, to the platja, to the square, derech stav, derech the area, through the area where they have benches set up to sell their wares. So that area of the stav is a Karmelis. So he took from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus Ram derech the Karmelis chayav. He's chayav. So that is like the Tan of our Mishnah. Ben Azai, however, paiter. Ben Azai says he's paiter because Ben Azai holds that mahalach is koimet. Walking is equivalent to stopping, because when he takes steps, he takes a step and then he puts his foot down, and he moves another foot, he puts it down. So that's equivalent to stopping. And Ben Azai holds that is derech a Karmelis. It's like stopping in the Karmelis, and you'd be potter. But our Mishnah does not hold that way, and it's saying it's a time that it's noch, that it rested in the Eskupa. That's why it's potter. But if he had walked straight through, and even though he passed through the Karmelis, he'd be chayav. Kupa shehimalei, if you have a basket full of fruit. So the Mishnah said that if the basket is full of fruit, and he put it on the Skupa Chitzaina, and so it's in the Rishus HaRabim, but even though most of the fruit is protruding into the Rishus HaRabim, but if it's still potter, Achi Yotzi is kol kupa, until he removes, it takes the entire basket, unless he takes the entire basket. Where is this true? Cheskia says it's when you have a basket that has long vegetables, like you have cucumbers or gourds, things that are very big and long. So therefore, you have one item, which part of it is in the Rishus HaRabim, but part of it still is in the Rishus HaYochid. Therefore, we say it's not considered a haitzah on the entire object, and he is therefore potter. Of a malaya chardal, but if it would be, for instance, filled with mustard seeds, that small seeds and many small seeds, but if that's the case, if you have the kupa that's on the chitzaina, the skupa chitzaina, some of the seeds will be entirely in the Rishus HaRabim. So over there, even though some of the seeds are still in the Rishus HaYochid, but some are entirely in the Rishus HaRabim, and you would be chayiv for that. Chayiv. Al mekasavar eged kli lo shmei eged. So it must be that Chizkiah holds that eged kli, the fact that they're all in one basket and they're bound together in one basket, we don't consider it to be one item. We look at the items, the mustard seeds, as individual objects, and if he has that roiv of the basket is, roiv of the items are outside, so inevitably some of the mustard seeds will be entirely outside, so therefore he is high for Haitzah. If it's one long object, so part of the cucumber is inside, it's not entirely taken out, then he's potter. But if it would be malei chardal, he'd be chayiv. But however, Yochanan Amar afilu malei chardal potter. Rav Yochanan says no, even with chardal you'd also be potter. Alma kasavar eged kli shmei eged, because he holds that eged kli is eged. It is considered bound together and one item until therefore you take the entire basket outside. You have not removed the entire object, and you have not been mitzi the entire object, so he's potter. So it says that the Mishnah is not meduik like either one of them. It's not meduik like Chizkiah, because the Mishnah says he said the Mishnah says you're not chayiv unless you remove the entire basket. Time of the kol kupa. Time that you remove the entire basket, ha-kol peras potter, which is mashma that even if all of the peras are outside, but the rim of the basket is still inside, you'd still be potter. Doesn't that show you that eged kli is shmei eged, that we consider it as all one object, and even if all of the pears are outside, but if the basket, the rim of the basket is still inside, you have not done a complete haitzah on this object. And Rav Yochanan is also not meduik like Rav Yochanan diktane alpha pisha roiv peres bachutz. It says even if most of the peres are outside. It says most. which is mashma time of the right pairs. It's mashma davka because right pairs, hot cold pairs, but if it be all the pairs, avagav dagida kupa migavoy, chayiv, but it would be all the pairs, even though the kupa dagida kupa migavoy, even though the basket itself would still be inside, chayiv. That you would be chayiv. Alma aged kli loish me aged. Doesn't that show you that the aged kli is loish me aged? That we don't look at the basket. The basket is not significant. It's not relevant to the discussion. Vela kasha. So it's a kasha. How will both of them, either of them, explain the Mishnah? Each one interprets the Mishnah according to their understanding. He says have to remove the entire kupa. Why is it the entire kupa? That's when it has cucumbers, it has gourds, that therefore removing kupa means removing the entire peri. Because since they're long stem vegetables or fruit, then essentially that's one and the same. Once you removed the entire peri, you removed the entire basket. So that's by kishum bedlum, for instance, of malei chardal. But if it's malei chardal, nasa kimisha, it says kol kupa v'chayev. Over there, then it's once you removed malei chardal, it's nasa kimisha, it says kol kupa, even though you haven't removed the entire basket, but it's once you've done that, it's as if you remove the kol kupa and you're chayev. Because you're chayev, because you have individual items that are entirely outside. So if it's malei chardal, it says we treat it as you remove the entire basket, because even though the entire basket is not outside, but some of the mustard seeds will be completely outside, and eged kli lo yishmei eged, and therefore he would be chayev. And Rav Yochanan interprets it according to his understanding. Aval pisha roiv pears b'chutz. It says even if roiv pears are b'chutz, v'loy roiv pears bilvad. So it's now telling you the smaller chiddush and then the greater chiddush. It says even though roiv pears are b'chutz, even though most of the pears are b'chutz, you're potter. And not only roiv pears, elafil kol pears and potter. And even if it's all of the pairs, so this is the missing piece in the Mishnah, and even if all of the pairs, still achi yoitzi es kol hakupa. So that's what it means when it says achi yoitzi es kol hakupa. It means, and even in a case where you have all of the pairs, still you're potter until you're moitze kol. But even if it's malei chardal, you'd still be potter until the entire kupa is removed, because eged kli shmei eged. Meisvel asks you kasha. It says a maitzi kupas roch hareich. If a person put the basket of the spice dealers, ve'nasa alas kupa chitzaina, and he put it on the outer skupa, which is the rishus harabim. Even though most of the type of the meat of the species are outside, potter achiyos kol kupa. You're potter until you remove the entire basket. Our assumption is that they're bundles. They're bundles of small spices in separate bundles, and it says you're potter until you might see the entire basket. Taisa explains that the reason we're assuming that it's bitzrori because that's a common case. That would be the common case of a kupas haroich. Al Kopanim it says you're potter unless you might see the entire kupa. Kasha lecheski is a kasha lecheski. So you see the eged kli shmei eged. Amar lacheski achamay I'm born to see. It says no. We're not talking about small bundles. We're talking about long stem items. Spices that are long, and so therefore, unless he carries out the entire kupa, he has not taken out any of the pears completely. But the eged kli is not a factor. So the Gemara will continue with asking kashas on this on the next Amud.